I should have known something was wrong the moment Vanessa's face lit up at the dinner table. My sister-in-law never shows genuine enthusiasm unless she's about to go for someone's throat. My name is Harper, and until last night, I thought I had finally reached a point where I could sit through a family dinner without feeling like my heart was being ripped out. It's been 14 months since we lost Oliver, my 8-year-old son, and while the pain never really goes away, I'd learned to carry it differently. I've been thinking, Vanessa announced, swirling her wine glass with perfectly manicured fingers, about Oliver's college fund. The table went silent. My husband Ethan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Even his parents, Charles and Linda, stopped eating their roast beef to stare at Vanessa. Since Alex is heading to college next year, she continued, her voice dripping with what she probably thought was compassion. And the money is just sitting there? I felt the room tilt sideways. The college fund. Oliver's college fund. The one we'd started the day he was born. The one that still had his crayon-drawn Harvard application stuck to its folder. The one I couldn't bring myself to close because it felt like admitting he'd never need it. Vanessa, Ethan warned, his hand finding mine under the table. I'm just being practical, she pressed on, ignoring the warning signs. Alex has his heart set on Yale, and with Greg's music career being what it is. She shot an accusatory glance at her husband, who suddenly seemed very interested in his mashed potatoes. Linda cleared her throat. Perhaps this isn't the best time. When is the best time? Vanessa's voice took on that familiar edge, the one that always preceded her most devastating blows. It's been over a year. We need to be realistic about these things. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Excuse me, I managed to say, though my throat felt like it was closing up. I need some air. The back porch had always been my sanctuary in the Winslow family home. It's where I used to sit with Oliver during these weekly dinners, making up stories about the constellations. He'd always insisted that the Big Dipper was actually a giant robot arm reaching down to scoop up star soup. The door creaked open behind me. Harper. It was Ethan. I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would. Don't. I wrapped my arms around myself, fighting against the autumn chill. Just don't make excuses for her. Not this time. He stepped closer, and I could feel his internal struggle, the architect in him always trying to fix things, to make broken pieces fit together again. She's not thinking clearly. With Alex's college applications and their financial situation, our son's memory isn't her personal piggy bank, I snapped, finally turning to face him. In the dim porch light, I could see the pain in his eyes matching my own. And you know what makes it worse? She's not even doing this for Alex. She's doing it because she can't stand that we had something she couldn't touch. Inside, I could hear Vanessa's voice rising, probably defending herself to Linda and Charles. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Greg slipping out the front door, likely heading for his usual cigarette escape. I want to leave, I said quietly. Now. Ethan nodded, but before we could move, Vanessa's voice carried through the open window. It's not healthy, the way they're holding on to everything. Oliver wouldn't have wanted. Something snapped inside me. The grief I'd been carefully managing for 14 months transformed into something else entirely. Something darker. Something that whispered that maybe it was time Vanessa learned what it felt like to lose something precious. I turned to Ethan, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Your sister just made a terrible mistake. He must have seen something change in my expression because he took a step back. Harper. But I was already walking back inside, my mind racing with possibilities. Vanessa had always been so proud of her perfect life, her perfect image. Perhaps it was time someone showed everyone what lay beneath that carefully constructed facade. After all, she'd just given me permission to be practical about family matters. The morning after the dinner disaster, I found myself sitting in my classroom, staring at 30 blank journals I'd bought for my creative writing students. Usually, these empty pages filled me with possibility. Today, they just reminded me of all the stories Oliver would never write. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ethan. Mom wants to host a makeup dinner this weekend. Says we need to clear the air. I switched off my phone without responding. Clear the air? The air was perfectly clear. Vanessa had shown exactly who she was, and no amount of Linda's famous pot roast was going to fix that. A knock at my classroom door startled me. Greg, of all people, stood there, looking as out of place in a high school as his vintage band t-shirt suggested. "Harper?"
Got a minute?
I gestured to an empty student desk, watching as he folded his lanky frame into it. Greg had always been the family outlier, the struggling musician who'd somehow caught the attention of status-obsessed Vanessa. "Look," he started, running a hand through his graying hair. "About last night. If Vanessa sent you, she doesn't know I'm here." He shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, she doesn't know a lot of things these days." Something in his tone made me pause. "What do you mean?" "The Yale thing." Greg leaned forward, lowering his voice. "It's not just about Alex's future. Vanessa's been, well, let's just say her real estate commission checks aren't matching the lifestyle she's broadcasting on social media." The revelation hit me like a splash of cold water. She's in financial trouble? Remember that luxury condo listing she was bragging about last month? It fell through. Third big deal this year to collapse. He glanced at the door, as if expecting Vanessa to materialize. But she already put down deposits on Alex's prep courses, college consultants, the works. Using money we don't have. I thought about Vanessa's designer outfits, her new car, the lavish Sweet 16 party she was planning for Alex, all while eyeing Oliver's college fund like a vulture. "Why are you telling me this?" Greg's face darkened. "Because last night wasn't about helping Alex. It was about saving face. And I'm tired of watching her tear people down to build herself up." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Linda. "Family meeting. Tonight. Non-negotiable." Greg spotted the message and winced. "Good luck with that. I'd come for moral support, but I've got a gig." "How convenient," I muttered. "Hey." He stood up, adjusting his leather jacket. "Just remember something. Vanessa's never gotten over the fact that you got the good brother." The family meeting was exactly as excruciating as I'd expected. Linda had arranged everyone in the living room like pieces on a chessboard, Vanessa and I on opposite couches, Ethan between us, Charles in his armchair playing referee. "We're family," Linda insisted, passing around coffee nobody wanted. "We need to work through this." Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I only meant to help. Harper's always been so sensitive." Sensitive. The word shot out before I could stop it. "You tried to raid my dead son's college fund." "That's not fair," Vanessa protested. "Alex is family too. Oliver would have wanted." "Don't." My voice came out sharp enough to crack glass. "Don't you dare tell me what my son would have wanted." Ethan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The movement caught Vanessa's eye, and something shifted in her expression, a flash of satisfaction at the distance between us. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money. Vanessa wasn't just trying to solve her financial problems. She was trying to prove something. To drive a wedge between Ethan and me. To show everyone that perfect Harper wasn't so perfect after all. "You know what?" I stood up, surprising everyone, including myself. "You're right, Linda. We are family. And family should know everything about each other. Every secret. Every lie. Every hidden truth." Vanessa's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, thinking of Greg's visit. "Why don't we start with your real estate business, Vanessa? I hear things aren't quite as successful as you've been claiming." The room went silent. In that moment, looking at Vanessa's stricken face, I realized something else. This wasn't going to end with just one family meeting. This was war. "You need to see this." Melissa slid her laptop across the coffee shop table, her lawyer face firmly in place. I'd known her since college, and that expression usually preceded bad news. The screen showed a series of bank statements. "Not mine, Vanessa's." "How did you?" "Greg came to my office yesterday," Melissa cut in, stirring her untouched latte. "He's thinking about divorce. Wanted to know his options. These records are interesting." I scrolled through the transactions, each one making my stomach twist tighter. Designer clothes, spa treatments, expensive restaurants. But what caught my eye were the regular transfers to an account labeled Alex's Future. "That's their college fund," I murmured. "Was their college fund?" Melissa tapped the screen. "Look at the withdrawals." The numbers told a story that made me feel sick. Vanessa hadn't just been dipping into Alex's college fund, she'd nearly drained it. All while eyeing Oliver's money like it was her personal backup plan. "There's more," Melissa said quietly. "Remember that charity fundraiser she organized last spring? The one for children's cancer research." My head snapped up. The one she dedicated to Oliver? Melissa's silence was answer enough. I remembered how Vanessa had stood at the podium, tears in her eyes, talking about her beloved nephew and the importance of supporting pediatric cancer research. The event had raised over $50,000. "The charity never received the full amount," Melissa said. "Only about $10,000 made it to the foundation. The rest disappeared into Vanessa's accounts." I finished feeling numb. My phone buzzed, Ethan asking where I was. We were supposed to meet his parents for lunch. I ignored it. "Harper." Melissa reached across the table, closing the laptop. "What are you going to do with this information?" Before I could answer, someone called my name. I looked up to see Alex, Vanessa's son, approaching our table. At 16, he was all gangly limbs and uncertain smiles, so different from his mother's calculated perfection. "Aunt Harper? Mom said you weren't feeling well, but I saw you through the window." He shifted awkwardly. "I actually wanted to talk to you about something." Melissa gathered her things, squeezing my shoulder as she left. Alex took her seat, fiddling with a paper napkin. "It's about the college fund thing," he said finally. "Mom keeps talking about Yale, but I don't want to go there." I blinked. "You don't?" "I want to study music production. Maybe go to Berkeley." He smiled slightly. "Like Dad. Mom says it's a waste of money, that I need a real degree from a real school." But it's your life," I finished softly, thinking of Oliver's crayon-drawn Harvard application. He'd wanted to be an astronaut that week. "Yeah." Alex looked down. "I found some paperwork in Mom's office. About my college fund. There's hardly anything left, is there?" The hurt in his voice made my chest ache. "Alex. It's okay. I kind of knew. The way she's been acting, the fights with Dad." He straightened up suddenly. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. Could you maybe not tell anyone? About Yale? Mom's already stressed about money, and if people found out." I stared at him. This kid trying to protect the mother who'd betrayed him. The mother who'd used my dead son's memory to cover up her own lies. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Linda. "Where are you?" "Vanessa has big news to share." Something cold settled in my stomach. I could picture it already. Vanessa announcing Alex's acceptance to Yale, using it to distract from her financial troubles, pushing her son into a life he didn't want just to maintain her perfect image. "I have to go," I told Alex, standing up. "But we'll talk more about this, okay?" He nodded, relief evident on his face. As I walked out, I made a decision. This wasn't just about Oliver anymore, or even about me. It was about stopping Vanessa before she destroyed more lives with her lies. I pulled out my phone and called Ethan. "We need to talk," I said when he answered. "About your sister. And this time, you're going to have to choose a side." The box of Oliver's things sat untouched in our bedroom closet for 14 months. But after showing Ethan the bank statements and explaining everything I'd learned, I found myself pulling it out while he paced our room, processing the revelations about his sister. "We can't just expose her," he said, running his hands through his hair. "Think about Alex." I lifted Oliver's favorite dinosaur t-shirt from the box, the fabric still soft despite countless washes. "Alex is exactly why we have to do something. She's destroying his future to maintain her lies." "Harper." Ethan's voice carried that familiar note of caution. The architect in him, always trying to find the perfect balance. "Maybe we should talk to her first, give her a chance to." My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Vanessa just told us the wonderful news about Alex's early acceptance to Yale. We're so proud." The dinosaur shirt slipped from my fingers. "She's already started," I whispered, showing Ethan the message. "She's building her lie bigger, making it harder for Alex to escape." Before Ethan could respond, another text came through, this time from Greg. She's planning to announce it at the charity gala next week. The one honoring Oliver. I'm sorry. The charity gala. The annual event where Vanessa played the grieving aunt, using my son's memory to boost her social standing. And now she was going to use it to trap her own son in her web of lies. I need some air, I muttered, grabbing my keys. I drove without thinking, ending up at Oliver's favorite park. The swing set where he used to pretend he could fly stood empty in the fading light. As I walked toward it, I spotted a familiar figure on one of the benches, Alex, hunched over his phone. He looked up as I approached. Mom's telling everyone about Yale, he said quietly. Grandmother called to congratulate me. I sat beside him, watching a group of kids play basketball nearby. What are you going to do? What can I do? His laugh was bitter, so unlike his usual self. The application deadline for Berkeley passed last week.
Mom.
She hid the forms I'd filled out. Said she was protecting me from making a mistake. Something inside me snapped. Not the hot, angry break from before, but a cold, clear certainty. What if you could still go? To Berkeley? Alex turned to me, confusion evident on his face.
How?
I thought about Oliver's college fund, still sitting untouched. About how he'd loved music, always dancing to Greg's guitar playing at family gatherings. About how he'd want his money to help someone chase their dreams, not enable more lies. Let me worry about that, I said. But first, I need you to be sure. Really sure. Because what happens next? It's going to change everything. My phone buzzed again, Ethan calling. I ignored it. I'm sure, Alex said firmly. I'm tired of pretending to be who she wants me to be. When I got home, Ethan was waiting with an expression I'd never seen before. Vanessa called, he said. She knows you were talking to Alex. She's threatening to sell Oliver's story to that true crime podcast that's been contacting us. Says if we expose her finances, she'll tell everyone her version of what happened that day at the pool. The world tilted sideways. Nobody in the family talked about that day, about how Vanessa had been watching Oliver while I was at a writing conference. About how she'd been too busy on her phone to notice him slip away. She wouldn't. I breathed, but I knew better. Vanessa would burn everything down to protect her image. Ethan reached for me, but I stepped back. We have to choose, I said.
Right now.
Between protecting Oliver's memory and exposing the truth. Harper.
No.
My voice was steady despite the storm inside. I'm done letting her use our son as a weapon. If she wants to tell her version, let her. But first, she's going to learn what it really means to lose everything. I pulled out my phone and dialed Melissa's number. Remember that evidence about the charity money? It's time. And Melissa? Make it public. Sometimes, protecting what matters means being willing to watch everything else burn. The annual charity gala was Vanessa's moment to shine, but tonight, the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hotel ballroom cast shadows that felt more like judgment than glamour. I watched her work the room, her designer dress catching the light as she shared her fabricated tale of Alex's Yale acceptance with anyone who would listen. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. We don't have to do this here. But we did. Because Vanessa had chosen this place, this event dedicated to Oliver's memory, to cement her lies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Melissa's text lit up my phone. Documents are ready. Just say when. I spotted Alex at the bar, nursing a glass of soda, his shoulders tense as another well-wisher congratulated him on Yale. Greg caught my eye from across the room and gave a slight nod. Everything was in place. Linda clinked her glass, calling for attention. Before Vanessa makes her special announcement, I'd like to thank everyone for supporting our family's charity work in memory of our beloved Oliver. My chest tightened. Oliver, who would never get to choose his future, who would never have his dreams stolen by someone else's lies. And now, Linda continued, Vanessa has some wonderful news about Alex's future. I stood up, my chair scraping against the marble floor. Actually, I have something to say first. The room fell silent. Vanessa's perfectly composed smile flickered. Harper, she warned, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I pulled out my phone, hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Because while we're all here celebrating Oliver's memory, there's something you should know about last year's charity funds. Charles stepped forward, ever the patriarch trying to maintain order. Harper, please. $40,000, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. That's how much never made it to the Children's Cancer Research Foundation. Would you like to explain where it went, Vanessa? The color drained from her face. You're lying. The bank records say otherwise. I turned to the crowd. The same records that show how she drained Alex's college fund to maintain her lifestyle. The same Alex she's now forcing into Yale against his wishes. Gasps and whispers filled the room. Alex straightened at the bar, something like hope crossing his face. You want to talk about bank records? Vanessa's voice turned sharp, desperate. Let's talk about that day at the pool. About how you left Oliver with me when you knew. When I knew what? The words came out like ice. That you'd be too busy chasing real estate deals to watch him? That you'd lie about checking on him every 15 minutes. Ethan stood beside me, his presence steady. Vanessa, stop.
No.
She whirled on him. She's trying to destroy me, and you're letting her. I'm your sister, and Oliver was your nephew. My voice cracked. But that didn't stop you from using his memory to fund your lies. Linda stepped between us, but it was too late. Vanessa lunged forward, grabbing my phone. In the struggle, she knocked over a glass of wine, staining her pristine dress crimson. Show them the rest, she hissed. Show them how you've been investigating me, plotting against me. Show them what a perfect, grieving mother you really are. Mom, stop. Alex's voice cut through the chaos. He stood there looking younger than his 16 years. Just stop lying. Please. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa looked around the room, at the faces of friends and family now clouded with doubt and disappointment. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling. You'll regret this, she whispered, but her voice shook. All of you. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving behind a room full of shocked witnesses and shattered illusions. I felt Ethan's arm around me, steadying me as my legs threatened to give out. We'd done it. We'd exposed the truth. But as I looked at Alex's lost expression, at Linda's tears, at Charles's rigid disappointment, I wondered, at what cost? Greg approached, holding out a folded paper. Found this in Vanessa's office while she was getting ready. It's from Oliver's last day. Maybe you should read it. My hands trembled as I took it, recognizing my son's messy handwriting. Sometimes victory feels a lot like loss. The morning after the gala, I found Oliver's memorial garden destroyed. His favorite blue hydrangeas torn from the earth, the small stone bench overturned, and the plaque with his name spray-painted black. But what broke me wasn't the destruction. It was the Yale acceptance letter left in the middle of it all. Alex's name crossed out and replaced with Oliver's. I stood there, still in my pajamas, as morning dew soaked through my slippers. Ethan came running out when he heard my scream. I'll call the police, he said, already dialing. Don't. My voice sounded hollow, even to me. We both know who did this. His hand dropped. Harper. She won. The words tasted like ash. Is that what you want to hear, Vanessa? You won. I shouted at the empty street, not caring who heard. Ethan tried to pull me inside, but I shrugged him off. I started picking up the scattered plants, my hands trembling. These flowers were the same shade as Oliver's eyes. He used to say they looked like little pieces of sky falling to earth. My phone buzzed, Linda calling again. I'd been ignoring the family's messages since last night, but this time I answered. Have you seen the news? Her voice shook. I hadn't. I'd been too focused on the garden. But when I opened my laptop, there it was. Local charity fraud scandal claims unexpected victim. The article detailed how Alex, distraught over the revelations about his mother and college fund, had attempted to run away last night. He'd been found at the bus station, hypothermic and scared. He's asking for you, Linda said quietly. I closed the laptop. I can't, Harper. I did this. The words came out choked. I was so focused on justice, on protecting Oliver's memory, that I hurt another child instead. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Greg standing there, looking worse than I felt. Ethan let him in while I stayed rooted to the couch, still clutching my phone. Alex told me everything, Greg said, sitting heavily across from me. About the music school. About how he was afraid to tell anyone what he really wanted. He pulled out a folded paper, Oliver's letter from the gala. Have you read it yet? I shook my head. I couldn't bring myself to open it last night. You should. He stood up, looking older than his 40 years. And Harper? Vanessa's gone. Took everything from our accounts and disappeared. She left a note saying she's going to make sure everyone knows the truth about that day at the pool. My stomach lurched. Greg, Save it. His voice was tired rather than angry. We all failed these kids, didn't we? You, me, Vanessa. We were so caught up in our adult drama that we forgot what really mattered. After he left, I finally opened Oliver's letter with shaking hands. It was dated the morning of the pool incident, written in his messy 8-year-old scrawl. Dear Aunt Vanessa, thank you for watching me today. Mom says you're sad because people don't see how hard you work. But I see you. You're like the moon. Sometimes you hide, but you're always there. Can we have pizza for lunch? Love, Oliver. The paper slipped from my fingers. All this time, I'd been fighting to protect Oliver's memory, but I'd twisted it into something he would have hated. My sweet boy, who saw good in everyone, even in Vanessa's hidden parts. Ethan found me still sitting there an hour later, staring at nothing. The police called, he said softly. They want to talk to us about pressing charges over the garden. I thought about Alex at the bus station, about Oliver's letter, about how revenge had poisoned everything it touched. No, I whispered. No more destruction. Oliver wouldn't want. My voice broke as a wave of nausea hit me. I barely made it to the bathroom in time. As I knelt on the cold tile, Ethan holding my hair back, I remembered something I'd been too stressed to notice. I was late. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of timing. The pregnancy test sat on my bathroom counter like a time bomb when Melissa called. Vanessa's back. She's at Oliver's Memorial Park. Of course she was. Where else would she go to deliver whatever final blow she'd planned? I'm calling the police, Melissa said.
No.
I grabbed my keys. This ends between us. The Memorial Park was 3 blocks from our house, a small playground with Oliver's name on a bronze plaque. Even before I saw her, I heard Vanessa's voice carrying across the empty swings. I knew you'd come. She sat on the bench where I used to read to Oliver, a manila envelope in her lap. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her perfect makeup gone. Couldn't resist one last confrontation. What do you want, Vanessa? She laughed, a hollow sound. Want? I wanted my son to be successful. I wanted my family's respect. I wanted to stop being the screw-up sister who married a failing musician while perfect Harper got everything. I lost my child, and I lost myself. She stood up, envelope clutched to her chest. Every day, watching you and Ethan, seeing how everyone rallied around her grief while She swallowed hard. Do you know what it's like, being the one who survived that day? The one everyone blamed.
I never blamed.
You didn't have to. It was in every look, every conversation. Poor Harper lost her son, while I was just the careless aunt who checked her phone instead of watching him. The playground felt smaller suddenly, the weight of unspoken words pressing in. A car door slammed nearby, Greg getting out of his truck.
He must have followed me.
I have proof, Vanessa continued, pulling papers from the envelope. Phone records from that day. Texts from you, asking me to watch him even though you knew I had an important client meeting. You are just as responsible. Stop. Greg's voice cut through her words. Just stop, Vanessa. She whirled on him. You don't understand. I need them to know. That you're hurting? I stepped closer. We know. We've always known. But this isn't about Oliver anymore, is it? Everything is about Oliver. She threw the papers, letting them scatter in the wind.
He saw me, really saw me.
That stupid letter. He was the only one who ever. Her voice broke. Greg moved toward her, but she backed away. I can't give you absolution, Vanessa, I said quietly. But I can give you this. I pulled out the pregnancy test from my pocket. I'm carrying your niece or nephew. And I need to know, does this child get an aunt, or does it get another war? The silence stretched between us, broken only by the creaking of empty swings. I found Alex's Berkeley application, Greg said softly. The one you hid. He's got real talent, Vanessa.
Like me.
Is that what scared you? Vanessa's shoulders slumped. For the first time since Oliver's death, I saw her. Really saw her. Not the perfect sister-in-law, not the vengeful antagonist, but someone as broken as I was, just wearing different scars. I don't know how to be anything else, she whispered. Then learn. I touched my stomach. For this baby. For Alex. For Oliver, who saw the good in you even when you couldn't see it yourself. She looked at the scattered papers, at Greg's extended hand, at my still flat belly. Something shifted in her expression. Not surrender, exactly, but exhaustion. The kind that comes before healing can begin. Alex wants to study music production, she said finally, her voice small. I know. I stepped closer. Oliver's college fund. It should go to someone who'll use it to create something beautiful. Greg's hand found Vanessa's shoulder. This time, she didn't pull away. I'm so tired, she breathed. Then let's rest, I said, thinking of Oliver's letter, of new life growing inside me, of the long road ahead. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. The sun was setting behind the playground equipment, casting long shadows that looked almost like children playing. Somewhere, I hoped, Oliver was watching. And maybe, just maybe, he was smiling. 6 months later, I stood in Oliver's restored memorial garden, my growing belly visible beneath my sweater. The hydrangeas were blooming again, tiny blue stars against the spring soil. Alex sat cross-legged nearby, strumming Greg's old guitar while recording ideas for his Berkeley application. That sounds beautiful, I said, recognizing hints of the lullaby I used to sing to Oliver. It's for the baby, Alex replied, not looking up. And for Oliver. I thought maybe they could share it. The sound of gravel crunching made us both turn. Vanessa stood at the garden entrance, looking smaller somehow in jeans and a simple sweater. Her therapy sessions had stripped away the designer armor she'd hidden behind for so long. The flowers came back, she said softly. They always do. I touched my stomach as the baby kicked. Nature's stubborn that way. Alex packed up his guitar, kissing my cheek before heading inside. He and Vanessa exchanged careful nods, their relationship still tender, healing slowly like everything else. I found something else, Vanessa said, once he was gone. In my old office files. She pulled out a water-stained envelope. It's from that day. I never opened it. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside was a crayon drawing, stick figures of our whole family, Oliver's last artwork. He'd labeled everyone, Mommy, Daddy, Aunt Nessa, Uncle Greg, Alex. Above us all, he'd drawn a huge moon. Like your letter, I whispered. About you being the moon. Harper, I know. And I did. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can transform into something else. Something that reminds us we survived. The back door opened and Ethan emerged with Linda and Charles. They carried boxes of Oliver's old toys, the ones we'd finally decided to donate to the children's hospital. Each item had been carefully cleaned, photographed, and logged in a memory book we'd made. Ready? Ethan asked, his free hand finding the small of my back. I nodded, watching Vanessa pick up a box without being asked. She'd been doing that lately, showing up, helping, trying to rebuild trust one small action at a time. I have the nursery photos, Linda said, her iPad ready. If you want to see the final design? We gathered around, looking at the room Ethan had architected. He'd incorporated subtle nods to Oliver, constellation wallpaper, a tiny toy dinosaur painted into the mural, a music box that played that same lullaby Alex was working on. It's perfect, I said, meaning it. The baby's lucky, Vanessa murmured, to have all this love waiting. So were we, I replied, meeting her eyes. We just forgot sometimes. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat in the nursery's rocking chair. The moon cast shadows through the window, dancing across the constellation wallpaper. I thought about Oliver's drawing, about how he saw us all connected under the same sky. My phone lit up with a text from Melissa. Alex's Berkeley application is ready. Want to review it tomorrow? Another message followed, this one from Greg. Vanessa asked about family counseling. Together. All of us. And finally, from Vanessa herself. Thank you for letting me be the moon again. I closed my eyes, feeling the baby move. We decided not to learn the gender, but somehow I knew, a girl. A fresh start, but not a replacement. Never that. Your brother drew us a picture. I whispered to my belly. He knew something I forgot, that family isn't about being perfect. It's about being there, even when we're hiding, even when we're scared. The nursery door creaked open. Ethan stood there, holding Oliver's favorite stuffed dinosaur, the one we'd decided to keep. Room for one more? He asked. I patted my stomach, smiling. Always room for one more. He placed the dinosaur on the windowsill, where moonlight made its shadow look almost alive. Together, we watched the stars emerge, each one a tiny light in the darkness, each one a reminder that even after the longest night, morning comes. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to look, we find that the light was there all along, waiting for us to notice.
I'm Lily, a 30-year-old single lady who simply can't seem to find love. I needed a night out after splitting from my unfaithful spouse, and Lisa's party looked like the ideal getaway. Outside of the drama, my life is rather straightforward. I own a boutique in the city, a tidy little shop that sells high-end clothing to customers who don't pay attention to prices. I could hardly hear myself think when I entered Lisa's crowded apartment because of the music and the commotion. I picked up a drink and was looking for a peaceful spot when Lisa, her eyes filled with anticipation, grabbed my arm. You succeeded, Lily. Look, I want you to meet this person. She pulled me through the crowd of partygoers and said, he's right up your alley. Finance stuff and all that, above the music. Before I knew it, I was facing a tall man who was grinning cheekily. He gave off the impression that he was not scared to tell you how much money he made. This is Nathan, Lily. Meet Lily Nathan. Before I could object, Lisa winked and introduced us, saying she owns the choicest clothing store downtown. Nathan's look was inquisitive, and his grip was forceful. You mean a clothes store? It sounds like so much fun. He continued in a smooth, assured voice. I work in finance myself, corporate investments, and all that jazz. Yes, it's fantastic. I take a sip of my drink and try not to roll my eyes in response. I get to meet all sorts of interesting people, I said. Talking commerce was the last thing I wanted to do. Why haven't I seen you around before then? I wouldn't forget a beautiful woman like you, he said, leaning little too closely. I arched an eyebrow and moved back. The reason for this is probably because I spend more time working with fabric samples than attending financial galas. Tell me about yourself. Big deals and all the numbers. He gave a real, hearty chuckle. I think so. However, it's not as glamorous as it seems. However, I'm off duty tonight. What do you think is the worst aspect about managing your own company? Inventory days and holiday returns, I continued, and in spite of myself, I warmed up to the discussion. How about you? What irritates you about the finance industry? The never-ending paperwork and regulations. But enough about the job. What do you like to do? With a disarming smile, Nathan asked. At a boisterous party, I found myself chatting about things I hadn't anticipated talking about with a financial guy. My passion for old jazz recordings and thrift shop excursions. Instead of only listening, Nathan was actively participating by posing queries and sharing personal anecdotes about his search for the city's top music venues. The celebration was coming to an end before I realized how quickly the evening had gone by. Nathan glanced at his watch before turning back to face me. Talking to someone so fascinating for the entire evening was not what I had anticipated. "Can we meet up again?" I paused as I thought about the recent split. "I'm not really looking to jump into anything new," I said. "Don't put any strain on yourself." To put it simply, it will include sharing more music and perhaps coffee. He recommended, "I know a place that does live jazz on the weekends." It was like entering a maelstrom of spontaneous city walks and jazz evenings when dating Nathan. We had been dating for some time, and although I had made it clear to him right on that I wasn't interested in becoming involved, it felt like every day spent with him made me less determined. Nathan called me one evening when fall was just beginning to set in and said, "Hey Lily, put on that fancy red dress you love so much. I have a surprise in store for you." I said, intrigued, "You've got yourself a bargain as long as the surprise includes some good food. I'm going hungry." He laughed. "Trust me, you'll want to be there." He and I met outside my shop. He appeared to have stepped out of a magazine as he leaned against his automobile. "Ready for that surprise," he said as he let me in via the passenger door. He kept the location a mystery as we were driving, engaging in constant conversation that made me laugh and a little nervous. At last, we arrived at this little, intimate jazz club in the heart of the city, complete with low lighting and small tables. We followed the host to a quiet area close to the stage. But Nathan's focus was entirely on me, not the band. He leaned in and whispered, "Lily, I know you said you wanted things light, but I've got to be honest with you." Midway during a heartfelt saxophone solo. "Oh yeah." As I sipped my drink, my heart began to beat a little faster. "Honest about what?" "About this," he said, extracting a little velvet box from within his jacket. The gentle light fell on a plain, tasteful ring as he opened it. "Lily, you have me completely smitten. I no longer want to go on dates or simply hang around. I'd like more. With you, I want everything. Will you wed me?" I was stunned for a second. His sincere, optimistic expression was all I could see as the music faded into a fog. Then my pragmatic side came out. This is enormous, Nathan. I'm afraid of plunging back into deep seas, you know." I know," he said quickly as he held my hand in reassurance. "But consider it. Together, we're fantastic. We both can't dance to save our lives. You laugh at my jokes, and I act as though I understand art because you do. What else are we in need of?" I laughed despite myself. "Maybe a bit more practice on the dance floor." "Anything," he grinned. "So what do you say?" Looking into his eyes, I realized that I did want this. Us, a future, all of it. "Yes," I finally said, feeling lighter than I thought I would. "Yes, I'll marry you." Nathan slipped the ring on my finger, and we celebrated the only way we knew how, by staying until the club closed, talking about everything and nothing, already planning our next adventure together. The next day, Nathan was eager to introduce me to his mother, Mrs. Harper. We met for brunch at a quaint little cafe she loved. Right off the bat, Mrs. Harper was all smiles and open arms. "Oh, Lily, I'm so thrilled Nathan found someone like you. I just know we're going to be great friends." As we settled into our seats, she began chatting away, filling me in on all the little details of Nathan's life. "You know he absolutely loves lasagna. I must give you my recipe. And if you really want to spoil him, make him his favorite chocolate pecan pie. He's just like his father, can't resist a good pie." The brunch went by in a blur of laughter and shared stories, making me feel a little more part of Nathan's world, a world I was slowly but surely starting to love. It had been quite the reveal taking Nathan to the house where I grew up. It's this big old place that looks like it came straight out of a storybook, all thanks to my dad's knack for playing the stock exchange. When we pulled up in the driveway, Nathan's eyes about popped out of his head. "Wow, this place is incredible," he exclaimed, looking around like a kid in a candy store. "Yeah, Dad's done well for himself," I said, trying to play it cool even though I was proud of where I came from. Inside, Nathan was polite, but I caught him more than once checking out the finer details of the house's decor and the art on the walls, even asking my dad about some of the antiques. It wasn't all bad, though. My parents seemed to like him, especially when Dad and Nathan started talking money and investments. My mom pulled me aside while the guys chatted. "He seems like a good man, Lily," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Very attentive, isn't he?" "Yeah, he's great." I smiled, though part of me wondered if his interest was more in the lifestyle my family had than in me. I shook off the feeling, not wanting to judge too harshly too soon. Later, as we were leaving, Nathan couldn't stop talking about the house. "One day, I'd love a place like this. Imagine the parties I could throw, the people I'd host," he mused, already daydreaming. I nudged him lightly, bringing him back to earth. "You mean the kind of home we could build for our kids, right?" "Of course, that's what I meant," he corrected quickly, with a sheepish grin. "Our kids would love it, wouldn't they?" "Definitely," I agreed, though his initial comment lingered in my mind longer than I wanted it to. Fast forward to today, our wedding day, and all those jitters and doubts seemed trivial compared to the joy of the moment. We decided on a simple ceremony at a local garden. It was intimate, just close family and friends, no big spectacle. As I walked down the aisle, seeing Nathan waiting for me, all my worries melted away. His smile was all I needed to reassure me of our future together. After we were declared husband and wife, the celebration began. It was laid back, just how we wanted it. We danced, laughed, and enjoyed the company of our loved ones. During the reception, my dad clinked his glass for a toast. "To Lily and Nathan, may your life together be as beautiful and enduring as this day. Remember, the best things in life aren't things. They're the moments and memories you create together." As the party carried on into the evening, I felt a profound sense of contentment. Whatever uncertainties the future held, I was ready to face them with Nathan by my side. Life after the wedding was a whirlwind. Nathan and I were settling into married life, adjusting to each other's habits and routines, when we were hit with a curveball. My dad, who had always been the pillar of strength in our family, got sick, really sick. It was cancer, and it came out of nowhere, or so it seemed. We spent a lot of time at the hospital. During one of those visits, Dad decided to have a heart-to-heart with me. Nathan was there too, fetching coffee down the hall. When he returned, he found us whispering seriously and sat down, his face etched with concern. "Lily, there's something important I need to tell you," Dad said, his voice weaker than I remembered it ever being. He took a deep breath, grasping for every bit of strength he could muster. "I've made some decisions about the estate. You're going to inherit $3 million. The room fell silent for a moment, even with the constant beeps and murmurs of the hospital around us. I didn't know what to say. It was a lot of money, a life-changing amount. Nathan, who had just sat down with the coffees, almost choked on his drink. "Wow, that's a lot of money," he stammered, trying to keep his composure. I could see the wheels turning in his head, and something in his expression shifted. It was subtle, but it was there, a flicker of something that wasn't just surprise. It looked a lot like calculation. "Yeah, it's a big responsibility," I responded, feeling suddenly very tired. It's not just about the money. It's about keeping Dad's legacy alive, making sure we manage everything responsibly. Dad nodded, looking relieved that I understood the weight of his decision. I trust you, Lily. You know what's important. Nathan quickly added, "Of course we'll take care of everything, sir. It's what's best for our future, right?" I noticed the weight in his statement and felt a twinge of discomfort. This was suddenly about us, not just me. "Yeah, sure," I said, but my mind was racing. This wasn't how I wanted this conversation to go. After that day, things changed. Nathan started talking more about investments, real estate, things we could do with the inheritance. One night over dinner, he brought it up again. "So I was thinking about the money," he began, not wasting any time. "We should start looking into some properties, maybe even consider some high-yield investments." I was pushing my food around my plate, not really hungry anymore. "Nathan, can we slow down a bit? This isn't just free cash to throw around. It's my dad's hard-earned money. We need to be careful, think things through." He looked a bit taken aback, but recovered quickly. "Of course I get that. I just think it's a good opportunity to grow our assets, make sure we're set for the future." The words hung in the air, heavy and a bit too presumptuous for my taste. "Yeah, I know, but let's just handle one thing at a time, okay?" My dad's still here, and that's what matters now. Nathan nodded, but the eager glint in his eye didn't match his agreeable tone. "Sure, Lily, whatever you think is best." The weeks following Dad's passing were some of the hardest I'd ever lived through. The world seemed to move on, but I was stuck, my grief a constant shadow. Nathan and his mom, Mrs. Harper, were around a lot, supposedly to help out. One night, their true colors showed through in a way that rocked me to my core. It was late, and I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts, too much sadness. Mrs. Harper had been all sweet and comforting, hovering around me with hot teas and sympathetic smiles. "Lily, dear, you look exhausted. Why don't you take one of these sleeping pills? It'll help you rest," she suggested, holding out a small pill. "Okay, I'll do that," I muttered, not keen on the idea. I didn't want to miss a moment, didn't want to blur the edges of my memories of Dad with drug-induced sleep. She shrugged, placing the pill on the kitchen counter. "I'll be in the living room if you need anything." I nodded, pretending to head to my room, but something felt off. Curiosity, or maybe intuition, nudged me to stay awake, to listen. I crept back towards the living room, the floor cold under my feet, my heart pounding in the silence. Their voices were hushed but heated. I paused at the edge of the room, hidden by the darkness. "Are you sure she took sleeping pills? She's been so stubborn lately." Nathan's voice was frustrated and sharp. Mrs. Harper's reply was smooth like honey. "Give it time. She's vulnerable, grieving. Now's our chance to get things moving. That money should be in your account, not just sitting there. Yeah, and soon. I'm tired of playing the supportive husband. Once we get the cash, I can finally move on, maybe find someone younger, more fun." The air in my lungs froze. My heart skipped beats. This was not the man I married. This was a stranger speaking so coldly, so calculatingly. His mother chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Just make sure I get my share. A new house, perhaps. That cute little convertible we saw the other day. Of course, Mom, you'll get whatever you want. Lily's too dumb to figure it out before we clean her out." I felt sick, my hands trembling. How could I have been so blind? The love, the marriage, it was all a setup. Quiet as a shadow, I backed away, needing space to think, to breathe. I went to my room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, my mind racing. They were plotting against me, planning to strip me of everything. Morning came, and I acted as though nothing had happened. At breakfast, Nathan and his mother exchanged glances, their smiles too sharp, too knowing. Nathan brought up the inheritance again. Lily, we really should start thinking about that investment. It's what your dad would have wanted for us, to secure our future. His words made my stomach turn, but I kept my face neutral, my voice calm. I'll think about it, Nathan. Let's see what the lawyers say about the best way to handle everything. The days following my father's funeral were some of the hardest I'd ever had to pretend through. I played the part of the devastated daughter to a T, all while watching Nathan and his mother make plans for a future funded by my inheritance. His mother wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, openly browsing for new houses and cars on her laptop in the living room as if the money was already hers. Meanwhile, Nathan was barely home. He stayed late at work, came home later than usual, and even when he was around, he was glued to his phone. One evening, as he was taking a shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand next to our bed. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen and saw a message pop up from some woman. It wasn't just friendly, it was flirty. I felt a weird mix of anger and relief. Anger because of the betrayal, but relief because it just proved what I already knew. A cheater in one part of life is a cheater in all parts. That weekend, I told Nathan I needed to clear my head and visit my mom. He barely looked up from his phone, just nodded and mumbled something about taking all the time I needed. Driving to my mom's place felt like escaping a prison. As soon as I saw her, the weight of everything started to lift. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, Nathan's late nights, the messages. I laid it all out. Mom was curious at first. That rotten scoundrel. She exploded, pacing the kitchen, playing happy families while plotting behind her back. But then her anger turned to laughter, a deep rolling laugh that filled the kitchen. Oh, Lily, they think they're so clever, but they've got another thing coming. Just wait until the wills read. They won't know what hit them. Her confidence was infectious. For the first time since that awful night, I felt like maybe things would turn out all right. So we just wait. That's it, she confirmed. Let them make their plans. They're building castles in the air, and we're about to bring them right down to the ground. Back at home, Nathan was exactly where I left him, phone in hand, probably texting that woman. But I didn't care anymore. I had something they didn't. A plan and the truth on my side. I went to bed that night, not with a heart heavy with dread, but with a spark of strategy and the anticipation of what was soon to be served. The day to read my dad's will finally arrived, and you could cut the tension in the lawyer's office with a knife. Nathan and his mom were practically buzzing with excitement, thinking they were about to become filthy rich. I was sitting there, feeling like I was about to watch a show, knowing all too well what the final would be, thanks to my mom's hint. We all gathered in the small, stuffy office, the air thick with anticipation. Nathan kept glancing at his watch, and his mom was tapping her foot nonstop. You'd think they were waiting for a lottery draw the way they were carrying on. The lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, cleared his throat and opened the thick folder in front of him. Thank you all for coming today. As per Mr. Thompson's wishes, I will now read the last will and testament. Nathan leaned forward, practically on the edge of his seat. His mom whispered, "Here we go," under her breath, rubbing her hands together like she was about to receive her birthday present. Mr. Jenkins began with the usual legal jargon, but soon got to the part everyone was waiting for. To my daughter Lily, I leave the sum of $3 million. Nathan's mom let out a little squeal, and Nathan shot me a look that was meant to be comforting, but came off as smug. I just stared straight ahead, impassive. Mr. Jenkins continued, however, it must also be noted that along with this inheritance, There are debts incurred by Mr. Thompson amounting to $4 million. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Nathan's face went from smug to shocked to pale in a matter of seconds. His mom was furious. This must be some mistake. We need to see the documents, the proof. Mr. Jenkins, ever the professional, started handing out copies of the financial statements and debt notices. Everything is documented here. If you have any questions, you can consult with your own legal advisor. As the reality of the situation sunk in, my mom stood up. Her voice was calm but carried across the room. Nathan, you need to understand. My husband had a weakness for gambling. He made debts, borrowed from people, from banks. I hope you'll be noble in this situation and help Lily with these debts. Nathan and his mom looked like they had been slapped. Their shock quickly turned to outrage. Help pay the debts? Are you out of your mind? We're not paying for anything we didn't spend. Nathan's mom shouted, her earlier facade of politeness completely gone. Nathan was just as quick to disengage. I want to divorce Lily. And in the divorce, we'll state that neither of us claims any money or property from the other. That was it. I looked at him, feeling a mix of relief and disgust. Okay, Nathan, if that's what you want, I agree. We can get the divorce papers ready. As they stormed out of the office, fuming and defeated, my mom squeezed my hand, giving me a reassuring look. It's going to be okay, Lily. We're better off without them. Nathan and his mother couldn't help but reveal their true selves one final time after signing the divorce papers. I heard them giggling behind me as we left the lawyer's office. Well, at least now she'll be drowning in her father's debts, said Nathan's mother with a sly smile. $1 million is lost. Nathan glanced back at me and chuckled. Yes, Lily, good luck handling that mess. It appeared to perplex them that I couldn't resist laughing at myself. Nathan scowled. What on earth is making you laugh? My mother, calm as ever, stepped in at that point. Until then, she had remained silent, only watching. Because you're completely mistaken, Nathan. You see, I've always been in charge of our money. Bless his soul, your father-in-law wasn't the financial whiz that everyone believed him to be. Their arrogant looks wavered. What are you discussing? Nathan's mother lost it. With a hint of hardness in her eyes, my mother grinned. All of the profitable stock transactions and investments were made by myself. I have about $50 million in net wealth. I won't have any trouble paying off Lily's inherited obligations. Nathan's expression became pale. Hold on, what? Are you serious? Yes, Mom went on, and I've decided to give Lily a lovely house as well, because I'm in the mood to share. She won't have to tell anybody about it, certainly not a gold digger. Their expressions of disbelief were priceless. In fact, Nathan's previous haughtiness vanished as he stumbled, Lily, please. None of that was my intention. I was simply confused. He and his mother were still processing the news when I turned my back on them. I blocked their numbers on my phone as we were leaving. I didn't want to hear from one of them again after that. I learned that Nathan was having problems a few weeks later. The BFS were following him, and his debts had caught up with him. He made an effort to get in touch, pleading for assistance through texts sent through common friends. I didn't falter. I instructed a buddy to repeat his requests, saying, "Tell him I wish him the best of luck." That was the best I could do for him. I'm Mia, and I'm 55 years old, and in the antiseptic silence of a hospital ward. The IV drip serves as a continual reminder of the fight against cancer. The warmth I once had at home, which is now a faint recollection, contrasts sharply with the frigid touch of the blankets. It's been 15 years since I married George, a widower with a bright-eyed daughter named Mia. She immediately accepted me as her father's wife and as a spiritual mother when she was 10 years old, all pigtails and toothy smiles. She became the unexpected delight in a marriage that I believed would fill the pages of my life with love and companionship, the daughter I never had. George was a powerful businessman whose charm stemmed from his charisma and his seeming readiness to start a new life with me. However, time erodes facades, and his once kind forbearance was replaced by unrelenting demands. A second shift was waiting for me as I went home from my work as a financial analyst, which required accuracy and allowed for little margin for error. This was a test of my domestic attentiveness. In his opinion, I was destined to fail. I recall his high expectations and his meticulous examination of the dining table. He would hardly glance at the meticulously prepared food in front of him before asking, "Mia, is this the best you could do?" Each of his statements added to the others until I felt like I could hardly stand. Even when my body cried out for rest, I kept cooking, cleaning, and taking care of him. "Mia, you need to take care of yourself too." My parents, God bless them, would frequently advise me, but their counsel would be ignored. I was too enmeshed in the appeasement loop. My mobile phone pings during one of these quiet lunches, jolting me out of my reverie. Mia is here. Her voice is a comfort to my weary soul. "Mom, how are you holding up?" I attempt to sound more resilient than I actually am. "I'm persevering, my love. How are you?" I can tell she's carrying a burden too big for her young shoulders since she has been silent for far too long. "Mom, I worry about you." "He doesn't appear to care, Dad." Her remarks are shocking, but not shocking. The blips on the monitors next to me have been as loud as George's absence in these immaculate white walls. "I know it's okay, Mia, my darling." I say, "We have each other," in a tone that combines resolution and melancholy. After a little silence, her voice, which is full of calm strength, is heard. "We do, and I'm with you at every turn. Instead of worrying about Dad, focus on improving yourself." The anchor I didn't realize I needed is her certainty. We don't discuss George, the chilly meals, or the fact that his gaze no longer made me feel warm when she comes to visit. Rather, we discuss her work, the literature she reads, and the life she is creating. I'm proud of her fortitude and self-reliance, and I hold on to the memory that I had some influence on the amazing lady she has grown into. I close my eyes and lean back, remembering Mia's assurances. In some way, the hospital room feels less restrictive, as though her words had given its corners new life. I should not lose sight of the fact that I am not alone. My alarm clock is an unrelenting enemy as the day begins before the sun rises. My motions are as routine as the coffee maker that sputters to life in the kitchen when I get out of bed and put on the clothing I lay out the night before. George is still sleeping, and the only sign that life is happening is the rise and fall of his chest. The spreadsheets and statistics are a nice diversion. They just exist in their black and white cells, waiting for me to interpret them, without complaining or demanding anything. My coworkers, who are often chatting about office gossip and weekend plans, are a different story. Janet from accounting says, "Mia, you've got to come out with us one of these Fridays," as she peers into my cubicle. Though I can't recall the last time I had plans without George or a shopping list, I force a grin. "Thanks, Janet, maybe next time." She pats my shoulder empathetically and then buzzes off to her next conversation. The routine resumes at home. When George comes in early from work, I'm cutting veggies for his favorite stew. I prepare myself for whichever version of him walks through the door since his mood fluctuates. He remarks, "Smells good," which seems like a minor triumph. The breath I've been holding is released. I reply in a level voice, It should be ready in about an hour. With a grumble, he vanishes into the living room. I'm left alone in the kitchen with the potatoes and carrots while the TV comes to life. The simple, dependable sound of my knife hitting the chopping board soothes me. Later, we sit across from each other at the dining table, a chasm of unsaid words between us. He's scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging the meal. It's good, he mumbles after a few minutes, but there's a distance in his voice that's become all too familiar. I nod, my own phone lighting up with a text from Mia. Thinking of you, Mom. Hope dinner went well. I type back a quick love you and slip the phone back into my pocket. George looks up, eyes narrowing. Was that Maya? Yeah, just checking in. I say, trying to keep the conversation light. He nods, going back to his phone, and we finish dinner in silence. I clean up, the clinking of dishes filling the empty air. Tomorrow will be the same, the grind wearing away like waves on a cliffside, constant and relentless. But tonight, Mia's message is a lifeline, a reminder that not everything is as cold and unforgiving as this routine. There's warmth there, love, and it's enough to keep me going for one more day. The hospital room's constant beeps and murmurs are background noise as I'm lost in thought. It's during one of these quiet moments that Mia walks in, her face etched with worry. I can tell she's bearing a weight, the kind that's ready to topple over. She pulls a chair close to my bed, takes my hand, and sighs deeply. Mom, there's something you should know. She begins, her voice a mix of anger and sorrow. I squeeze her hand, encouraging her to continue. What is it, Maya? It's about Dad. She pauses, gathering her thoughts. He has someone else. The words hang heavily between us. I had felt the presence of someone in our lives, an invisible intruder, but hearing it confirmed sends a chill through me. He introduced her to me, Mom, Mia's voice cracks, as his future wife. The air feels thick, like I'm breathing through cotton. I try to absorb the shock, to maintain some sense of composure for Mia's sake, but inside I'm reeling. When the word comes out as a whisper, last week he told me he was serious about her. Mia replies, her eyes not leaving mine, a silent apology in her gaze. There's a long pause as I process this betrayal. Thank you for telling me, sweetheart, I managed to say at last. How long have you known? Just a few days, she admits. I didn't want to upset you, but I thought it's better you hear it from me. The dull hum of the hospital seems to fade into silence. I'm grateful for her honesty, yet the pain is sharp, unyielding. I nod, feeling an odd sense of calm amidst the turmoil. We'll deal with this, I say, more to convince myself than to reassure her. Mia leans forward, resting her forehead against our clasped hands. I'm here for you, Mom, whatever you need. I draw a deep breath. My mind is already turning. My husband's betrayal is a deep cut, but I won't let it be the end of my story. There's a plan forming, a way out of the mess he's made. And in this sterile hospital room, with my stepdaughter by my side, I feel the first stirrings of a future where I am no longer in the shadows of a loveless marriage. I will rise from this with a cunning that's been honed by years of quiet observation. George may have underestimated me, but he'll soon learn that's his mistake. I look at Mia, her strength becoming my own. Let's start planning, I say, and there's a new determination in my voice. Our bond, unbroken by the lies that surround us, is the foundation we'll build upon. And as Mia smiles, a small, fierce smile, I know we'll win this battle together. The next day, Mia arrives with her laptop tucked under her arm and a look in her eyes that says she means business. She pulls up a chair next to my hospital bed, opens her laptop, and looks straight at me. Okay, Mom, let's talk strategy, she says with a determined nod. I can't help but smile at her spirit. I've been thinking about that, I admit. I want to be fair, but also I want to protect myself and my future, and yours. Mia nods, her fingers poised over the keyboard. First things first, we should get a lawyer, someone who can help us navigate the divorce smoothly. I agree. Yes, a lawyer, and we'll need to gather all the financial documents. I've got most of them at home in the safe. We can go through them together. Mia offers, what about the house and the rest of the assets? I've been doing some math. I start feeling the edge of the bed with my fingers. The house, I think. I'll let him have it. Mia frowns, surprised. Really? Are you sure? I nod firmly. I want a fresh start somewhere new without the memories. Plus, I've got something he doesn't know about. Her eyebrows raise in curiosity. What's that? The investment account, I say. The one my father helped me set up. It's in his name technically, but it's mine. There's quite a bit of money there, enough for a new place and a comfortable life. Mia's eyes widen. He doesn't know about that. No, and he won't. That money was from before we married. It's separate, and I want to keep it that way. Mia types away, probably making notes. Got it. We keep that account quiet. We should also think about alimony or any spousal support. I shake my head. I don't want his money, but I won't say no if it's offered. It could be useful. Okay, Mia says, and after the legal stuff is sorted, that's when I start my new life, I say, looking out the window. I want to travel, see places I've always dreamed of, when I'm well, of course. Mia reaches out and squeezes my hand. You'll get well, Mom, and I'll be right there with you wherever you go. I squeeze back, feeling a surge of gratitude for this girl. No, this woman, who's been my rock. We're in this together, I tell her, and it's more than just about the plan. It's about us, our journey ahead, and the unspoken understanding that we're a team now. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across my bed as we continue to plot, not just for the end of my marriage, but for the beginning of something new. Just the two of us, ready to face whatever comes next. A few days had passed since Mia and I had put together a plan. Lying on my hospital bed, I felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety about setting our plan into motion. Mia walked into the room, her face flushed from the cold outside. All right, it's time, she said, sitting down beside me. Are you sure you're up for this, Mom? I nodded. The IV in my arm was a stark reminder of my current weakness, but my resolve was strong. I'm sure. It's now or never. Mia took out her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. I'm about to text Dad. I'll tell him that you want to discuss the divorce and that you're willing to talk settlement. That'll get his attention. I murmured, the bitterness in my voice binding my calm exterior. Mia sent the text, and we waited. It didn't take long for her phone to buzz. She read the message and looked up at me. He's biting. Wants to come over tomorrow to talk terms. I couldn't help the wry chuckle that escaped my lips. Talk terms, huh? All right, when he comes, let him believe he's in control. That's the bait. Mia frowned slightly, her concern for me clear. And you're okay with this? With him coming here and acting like he's won. I reached for her hand, my grip firmer than it had been in days. It's just an act, Mia. Remember that. We're letting him think he's won because it's the only way to get what we need from him. Mia squeezed my hand back, her own determination returning to her eyes. Okay, Mom, I trust you. And I added, make sure he sees the safe when he comes. It's empty, but he doesn't know that. If he thinks there's something valuable in there, it'll keep him focused on the wrong thing. She nodded, making a mental note. Got it. And after he leaves, we proceed with the divorce as planned. But remember, whatever happens, don't let on about the money. That's our ace. Mia stood up, her phone in her pocket. I won't. We'll get through this just like you said, together. As she walked out, I lay back against my pillow, closing my eyes. This was just the beginning, but I had to believe that it would lead to an end. Our end. One where Mia and I could move forward free from the shadows of deceit that had loomed over us for far too long. The morning light crept through the blinds, casting lines across the hospital room floor. I had barely slept, thoughts whirling about the upcoming confrontation. I tried to steady my breathing, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor beside my bed a constant reminder of my situation. There was a knock on the door, and Mia peeked in, her face serious. "He's here, Mom." I nodded, sitting up a little straighter. "Let him in." Mia opened the door, and in walked George, my soon-to-be ex-husband. He had a smirk on his face that made my stomach turn, but I kept my expression neutral. "Hello, George," I said, my voice steady. "Didn't expect to see you looking so alive," he sneered, taking a seat without being offered one. "So what's this about a settlement?" I took a deep breath. I want to keep things simple. No dragging this out. You can have the house. His smirk widened. "That's generous of you. What's the catch?" "No catch," I replied, meeting his gaze. "I just want to end this cleanly." "I'm tired, George. I don't have the energy for a fight." Mia watched, her face a mask of control. George's eyes flicked to her and then to the safe in the corner of the room. "I suppose you'll be wanting support then," he asked, a greedy glint in his eyes. I shook my head slightly. "No, I don't want your money. I'll manage on my own." He leaned back, looking suspicious. "What's your game here? You're giving up everything. What are you hiding?" "Nothing to hide," I said, allowing a hint of fatigue to seep into my voice. "I just want peace, George, and I think you do too." He snorted. "Yeah, peace with a young, beautiful woman waiting for me." Mia's hand clenched into a fist, but she didn't speak. "I hope she makes you happy," I said quietly. George stood up, looking around the room once more. "Fine. I'll have my lawyer call yours. We'll get this over with." As he reached the door, he paused and looked back at me. "You're a fool, you know that. Letting go of everything without a fight." I met his gaze, my own eyes clear. "Maybe, but sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward." George shook his head and left, the door closing with a soft click behind him. Mia rushed to my side. "Are you okay, Mom?" I nodded, feeling a weight lifting off my shoulders. "I'm fine, it's done. Now we just have to follow through." Mia hugged me, her presence a comfort. "You're the bravest person I know." I hugged her back, allowing myself this moment of warmth. Brave, maybe. But I'm not in this alone, am I? "No, Mom," Mia whispered. "Not alone. Never alone." The ink on the divorce papers wasn't even dry when Mia dropped the bomb about the money. She was hesitant at first, biting her lip in that way she does when she's nervous. But I urged her on, knowing that whatever came next was just another scene in this absurd play my life had become. "Dad knows about the $3 million, Mom," Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. I sighed, not surprised. I expected as much. "What's his play?" It didn't take long for him to make his move. The next day, he was at my hospital room door, his eyes wide with a mix of greed and desperation. He knelt by my bed, taking my hand in his. "I've been a fool," he started, his voice trembling with faint emotion. "Please, let's put all this behind us and start over." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I felt nothing. It was liberating. I couldn't help but laugh, a genuine deep laugh that I hadn't felt in years. "Start over," I said, pulling my hand away. "There's nothing to start, George. It's done." His face turned an ugly shade of red, the mask slipping. "You think you can mock me?" he hissed. "I'll take you to court. I'll take every penny of that money." "That money," I said calmly, almost enjoying this, "is safely out of your reach. It's in my father's name. There's not a thing you can do about it." His eyes bulged and he spluttered, his anger a living thing between us. But before he could form words, security was at the door, alerted by the commotion. They didn't even need to speak. Their presence was enough. George's outburst was his final act, his curtain call as they escorted him out. His shouts echoed down the hall, a pitiful sound that faded with each step. A calmness descended upon me as I reclined against my pillows. After standing at the door with a worried and angry expression on her face, Mia finally exhaled deeply. "Are you okay, Mom?" With a smile on my lips, I grabbed for her hand. "Now, my love, I am. It's really over." For a while, we sat in quiet as the burden of the past began to fade and make way for something better and fresh. And I felt prepared to take on a new day as the door shut behind the final relic of my former existence. I was prepared to write my own tale since it was a fresh start. For George, life after cancer was like emerging from a long, dark tunnel into the light. I purchased a home with a large garden that seemed like ours, and that Mia could come to whenever she pleased. Ours, really. Mia and I were enjoying some lemonade on the patio one day as we watched the sun set behind the trees. She had been making the place a home by assisting me with unpacking boxes. Here, her laughing was commonplace, reverberating off the walls and occupying areas that had seen far too much quiet. Mia looked around the yard and added, "You know, Mom, I've never seen you this relaxed." I grinned when the sun's warmth touched my face. "There are many things for which I am grateful. I have you, I'm free of George, and I defeated cancer." She gave my hand a squeeze. "I'm simply happy that you're prioritizing yourself at last. Even when I wasn't your duty, you always looked out for me." I gave a head shake. "Mia, you were my duty at all times. That's when I made the decision to become your mother. My family was you." Mia smiled at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm relieved he's no longer in our life. I've always disapproved of the way he handled you, and his drama is over now." The sky was a tapestry of oranges and purples when the sun was almost gone. I felt more alive than I had in years as I got to my feet. "Let's enter. I'll prepare our favorite meal, spaghetti and meatballs." She sprang to her feet and followed me into the kitchen. Rolling up her sleeves, she said, "Can I help?" "You certainly can. To begin, roll the meatballs." After years of cooking side by side, we had mastered the dance of moving around the kitchen together. I felt a wave of satisfaction as I saw her hands, which resembled mine so much, forming the meatballs. I believed that this was the feeling of true family. No harsh language, no expectations, and no disappointments were present. Mia and I alone, with a future we could mold into anything we desired. The kitchen was filled with the aromas of our combined cooking and laughing, and I knew in my heart that this was what pleasure was all about. It was because to my kid that I was finally living after years of only existing. I took a seat on the shabby couch that had been the scene of late-night films and stories of laughter. In a room full of recollections of a better time, it was now merely an antique piece of furniture. My 3-year-old angel, Sophie, was upstairs, her soft breaths a sharp contrast to our home's stuffy air. It was beyond 10 p.m. when I looked at the clock once again. As usual, Mark was running late. The stillness was eventually broken by the sound of the key turning in the lock. I straightened my shirt and got to my feet, wondering why I still bothered to look nice for him. I yelled, Mark, as he replaced me, appearing more like a complete stranger than my spouse. You're running late. He responded with a groan without looking into my eyes. Work. Work is constantly involved. His tone had changed from one of warmth and affection to one of coldness and distance. I made an effort to sound informal. Today, Sophie inquired about you. When will Daddy come home, she wanted to know. He hung his coat haphazardly on the hanger after shrugging it off. Kids ask a lot of questions, but we don't always know the answers. A stab of agony went through my heart. Perhaps this weekend, the three of us could do something. Sophie would like that. With a sarcastic tone, Mark snorted. With everything going on, a family outing. Lily, don't be so naive. My hands shook a little. I didn't fall in love with this man. Mark, it's crucial. Her father is essential to her. He went to the refrigerator and took out a beer. A miracle, not my pretend play in the park, is what she needs. I was unable to control my tears. Mark, she's your daughter. How come you're so icy? He avoided looking at me as he took a drink of his beer. Lily, I'm being practical. A sick child in a home that feels more like a hospital are not the things I wanted in life. My voice rising, I followed him into the kitchen. How about me? Do you believe I take pleasure in seeing our daughter suffer? Do you believe that this is the life I had imagined? The beer bottle was slammed upon the counter by Mark. I'm not sure, Lily. I know I can't do this anymore, but I truly don't. Anger shot through me. You wish to abandon your own child. He took a large swallow of his beer and drank it. I require room. This is too much for me to handle. Suffocation? I repeated, sounding incredulous. Do you now consider your family to be that? Mark's shoulders tensed as he turned aside. It goes beyond that. The frequent hospital stays, the medical expenses, and the way Sophie's disease consumes our lives. It's all of it. This is not what I signed up for. I had run out of things to say. How had this terrible truth become our love? So, Mark, what are you going to do? Get away from us? Go someplace else to start over? His footsteps were heavy on the hardwood floor as he passed me without responding. As I stood there, I felt a range of emotions, sadness, rage, and a deep sense of betrayal. Later, while I laid in bed with the room next to me vacant and chilly, I heard Mark's TV in the other room. The gap between us had become too great to overcome. My child's father, the guy I married, was suddenly a stranger sharing a home. In stark contrast to the cozy atmosphere of our house, the hospital room was professional and harsh. In the little hospital bed, Sophie lay with her tiny chest gradually rising and falling. Holding her little hand, I sat next to her and tried to find strength in her naive sleep. Nurse Janet entered the room wearing a mask of professional benevolence. Lily, how is our courageous girl doing today? I forced a tired grin. She has always been a fighter. Janet moved gently and efficiently as she examined Sophie's vitals. Here, she's in capable hands. Among the greatest is the surgical team. With unsaid concerns tightening my throat, I nodded. I understand. I just wish Mark could spend more time here. She continues requesting him. Janet looked at me pityingly. Fathers frequently struggle to handle these circumstances, but you're doing a fantastic job. Feeling the weight of loneliness, I let out a sigh. You know, it's difficult to do things by yourself. Simply said, he has changed. Mark arrived, less reassuring than I had anticipated, as if on cue. His face was inscrutable as he looked at Sophie and then at me. How is she doing? The same, I answered, attempting to maintain a steady tone. He avoided making eye contact as he tinkled with his phone. Work is crazy, so I can't stay long. Anger flashed through me. Work? Yes, as that's what matters at the moment. Mark's eyes were icy as he gazed up. Lily, what do you want from me? To watch her sleep while sitting here? I suppressed a scathing reply, turning my attention to Sophie. Mark, she asked for you today. She longs for her father. He shrugged, his distance acting as a physical wall. I am present, am I not? Sophie awakened before I could reply, her small voice clear yet feeble. Papa. As he approached her, Mark's expression briefly softened. Hi, Princess. Daddy is present. With a little smile, Sophie reached for him. Daddy, stay with me. I watched with a mixture of sadness and optimism. After hesitating, Mark took a seat on the bed's edge. Sophie, I can't stay long. Daddy must go to work. Her smile faded, a look of understanding far beyond her years in her eyes. It's okay, Daddy. I love you. Mark forced a smile, patting her hand. I love you too, kiddo. As he stood to leave, I felt a surge of resentment. She needs you, Mark. We need you. He paused, his back to us. I'm doing what I can, Lily, but his words rang hollow in the sterile room. I watched him leave, a familiar sense of abandonment settling over me. Sophie's hand gripped mine, her small presence a reminder of the fight ahead of us. The room fell silent again, save for the beeping of the monitors. I leaned closer to Sophie, whispering promises of better days. Promises I wasn't sure I could keep. But in that moment, all I had was hope and the unwavering love for my daughter. The silence in the room was broken by a call from my friend Lisa, who worked as a realtor for a local company. I sat in the dimly lit hospital cafeteria, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee. My mind was a whirlwind of betrayal and shock after Lisa's call. Mark was selling our house, our home. Anger and disbelief swirled within me, fueling a determination I hadn't felt in months. Lisa slid into the seat across from me, her expression a mix of concern and anger. I can't believe he's doing this. Lily, selling your house while you're here with Sophie. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I need you to delay the sale, Lisa. Buy me some time. Lisa nodded, her eyes hard. I'll do what I can, but we don't have much time. He's pushing for a quick sale. I leaned forward, my voice low and firm. I won't let him get away with this. He thinks he can just steal my house and run off with whoever she is. Lisa reached out her hand, gripping mine. Do you have a plan? A plan. The word echoed in my mind. I had been reactive for too long, letting life and Mark's indifference dictate my days. But not anymore. I'm going to fight back. I'll start by talking to a lawyer. There has to be a way to stop this. Lisa's expression shifted to one of support. Good. You fight this, Lily, and I'm here every step of the way. I nodded, feeling a spark of resolve. And I'll need to gather evidence, proof of his betrayal, the fraud, anything that can help my case. Let's start with the house sale, Lisa suggested. I'll dig up everything I can on the buyer, the deal, anything out of the ordinary. I sipped my coffee, its bitterness mirroring my mood. I can't believe he's doing this to me, to Sophie, after everything we've been through. Lisa's hand tightened around mine. He's a coward, Lily, and he's going to regret underestimating you. I stood up, my resolve strengthening. He's going to pay for this, Lisa. He's going to pay for hurting my daughter, for trying to take away our home. I'll make sure of it. Lisa stood with me, her eyes fierce. Let's do this, Lily. Let's show him he picked the wrong woman to mess with. Hidden from view, I stood just outside the realtor's office. My heart raced through the slightly ajar door. I could hear the voices inside. Mark was there, his tone smooth and confident as he spoke to the potential buyers. And she was there too. His mistress, her laughter tinkling like a bell, completely oblivious to the storm she was a part of. I watched as Mark handed over a stack of papers to the buyers. His charm was on full display, the same charm that had once swept me off my feet. "This is a fantastic opportunity," he was saying. "A beautiful house, great location. You're getting a steal." The buyers, a middle-aged couple, nodded, their expressions a mix of eagerness and caution. The wife leafed through the documents, her husband leaning over to look. "It all seems in order," she murmured. Mark's mistress, a young woman with bright red lipstick, laughed and leaned closer to Mark. "Told you it would be easy," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay put to observe. This was about gathering evidence, understanding the depth of Mark's deceit. The husband looked up, a question in his eyes. "And the current owner, she's agreed to all this." Mark's response was swift, a lie so smooth it sounded like truth. "Absolutely. She's moved on, wants to sell the place quickly." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. How could he lie so blatantly? The audacity of it made my blood boil. Lisa, who was playing her part in my game, intervened. "We can proceed with the sale as soon as you're ready." The couple exchanged a look, then nodded. "We're ready. This is a deal we don't want to miss." I watched as they began to sign the papers, the finality of each stroke like a dagger in my heart. But I needed to stay focused. This was not the time for emotions. It was the time for action. Mark's laughter brought me back to the moment. He was toasting with the buyers, his mistress clinging to his arm. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. I stepped into the room, my gaze fixed on Mark. "Enjoying yourself, Mark?" Everyone turned, shock and confusion on their faces. Mark's smile faltered. "Lily, what are you doing here?" I walked up to them, my steps firm. "I'm here to stop you from making the biggest mistake of your life." Mark's mistress scoffed, rolling her eyes. "What are you talking about? The deal is done." I smiled, but it was cold, devoid of any warmth. "Is it now? Because I don't remember signing off on selling my house." The buyers looked uncomfortable, exchanging glances. "We were told everything was in order," the husband said, his voice uncertain. Mark stepped forward, trying to assert control. "Lily, you're confused. This is for the best." I shook my head. "No, Mark. The only confusion here is yours if you think you can forge my signature and get away with it." The room went silent. Mark's face turned a shade paler. "You can't prove anything," he blurted out. I pulled out a set of documents from my bag. "Actually, I can, and I have. These are the real papers. The ones you have are forgeries." Mark's mistress tugged at his arm. "Mark, what's she talking about? Tell me this isn't true." But Mark was speechless, his usual confidence shattered. That's when the door opened, and two police officers walked in. One of the officers looked directly at Mark. "Mark Johnson, you're under arrest for fraud and forgery." Mark's face drained of color. He looked at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. "You called the cops." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "Yes, I did. You broke the law, Mark, and you tried to steal my home." As the officers handcuffed Mark, his mistress started to cry, her makeup smearing. The buyers quickly gathered their things, eager to distance themselves from the situation. One of the officers turned to me. "We'll need your statement, ma'am." I nodded, feeling a sense of justice. "Of course, officer." As they led Mark away, he looked back at me, his expression a mix of anger and regret. But I felt no sympathy. He had made his choice, and now he was facing the consequences. Lisa smiled at me, nodding her head approvingly. I smiled back and left the office, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had stood up for myself and Sophie. I had fought back, and this was just the beginning. After Mark's arrest, I found myself in the lawyer's office, the walls lined with law books, and the air heavy with the scent of leather. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson, was a no-nonsense man in his 50s, his face etched with lines of experience. He glanced at the file in front of him. "Lily, your husband's actions have opened up a big can of worms. The fraud charge is serious." I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "I know, Mr. Thompson, but I couldn't let him get away with it. Not after everything." Mr. Thompson nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I respect that. Now about the divorce and custody battle, you're in a strong position, but it won't be easy." I leaned forward. "I'm ready for it. I have to do this for Sophie. She deserves a stable home." The lawyer shuffled some papers. "What about alimony and child support? Given Mark's incarceration, it's going to be complicated." I sighed, a mix of determination and sadness in my voice. "I want what's fair for Sophie. She's my priority." As for Mark, he made his choices. Mr. Thompson looked at me, his expression serious. "You're a strong woman, Lily. We'll fight for what's right for you and your daughter." As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Mark. I hesitated but answered. "What do you want, Mark?" His voice came through, laced with desperation. "Lily, please. I messed up. I know that, but don't take Sophie away from me." I stopped in my tracks. "You thought about Sophie when you tried to sell our house. When you spent your days with that woman?" He was silent for a moment. I lost my way, but I'm her father, Lily. I love her." I clenched my phone tighter. "Love isn't just words, Mark. It's actions. You've failed us both." Mark's voice cracked. "I'll do anything to make it right. Please, Lily." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "It's too late for that. You'll see Sophie, but only under supervised visits. That's non-negotiable." There was a pause, then a soft, defeated sigh. "Okay, I understand." The days were a whirlwind. I spent most of my time with Sophie, ensuring she felt loved and secure amidst the chaos. Her laughter was a balm to my wounded heart. One afternoon, while Sophie napped, I received a call from my sister, Laura. "Hey, Lily, how are you holding up?" Laura's voice was always a mix of concern and strength. I sighed, staring out the window. I'm mad at Laura. It's tough, but I'm getting through it. Laura was silent for a moment. I heard about Mark. "I'm so sorry, Lily, but I'm proud of you for standing up to him." I smiled faintly. "Thanks, Laura. It's hard, but I have to be strong for Sophie. She needs me now more than ever." Laura's voice softened. "And what about you? Who's being strong for Lily?" Her question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on Sophie and the legal battle that I hadn't given much thought to myself. I don't know, Laura. I guess I haven't had time to think about that." Laura was firm. "You need to take care of yourself too, Lily. You can't pour from an empty cup." I knew she was right. "I'll try, Laura. It's just, everything feels overwhelming right now." "You're not alone, Lily. Remember that. I'm here for you, always." The next day, I visited a therapist, Dr. Martin. His office was a small, cozy room with soft lighting and a comfortable couch. He greeted me with a warm smile. "Lily, it's good to meet you. How can I help you today?" I took a deep breath, unloading my worries and fears. "I just feel so lost, Dr. Martin. Everything I knew, everything I trusted, it's all been turned upside down." Dr. Martin nodded, his voice gentle. "It's understandable to feel that way after what you've been through, but it's important to remember that this is a chapter in your life, not the whole story. His words resonated with me. Over the next few weeks, I started to take small steps towards reclaiming my life. I joined a support group for single parents. The first meeting was daunting, but as I listened to others share their stories, I realized I wasn't alone. "Welcome," Lily said, the group leader, a kind woman named Beth. "We're here to support each other, to share our struggles and our victories." I shared my story, my voice steady but filled with emotion. The group listened, their faces a tapestry of empathy and understanding. After the meeting, a woman named Sarah approached me. "Your story is inspiring, Lily. You're stronger than you realize." Her words lifted my spirits. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn this painful chapter into a story of resilience and hope. With the early morning light streaming through the curtains, I sat in my living room and thought back on the turbulent path that had brought me to this peaceful moment. My newly acquired freedom was demonstrated by the divorce papers that were now signed and finalized and resting on the coffee table. The court case had been drawn out and difficult. I was determined to provide Sophie and myself a solid future, so I had sued Mark for a significant amount of his property. We had benefited from the court's ruling. Mark had lost a lot of the things he had formerly valued, and he was currently serving a genuine term for his fraudulent crimes. After being discovered in the web of deceit, his mistress was hit with a substantial fine that she had to pay to me as reparations. I recalled witnessing Mark and his mistress turn on one another while attempting to shift the blame as I was seated in the courtroom. Bitter accusations and last-ditch efforts to preserve themselves were all that was lost between them, not love. When I saw them, I was satisfied. Their ruin was the result of their avarice and treachery. They had received what was rightfully theirs. But there was a bright spot among the turmoil of court cases and mental upheavals. My courageous young child, Sophie, recovered quickly after her operation. Her enthusiasm and humor brought a glow to our house that had been sorely lacking for too long. I pondered our future while I sipped my morning coffee. I had put a lot of effort into securing this future, which appeared bright and promising. My top focus and ray of hope was Sophie. We had survived a storm together and come out stronger. I looked at the photographs on the mantel, pictures of Sophie and me, happy and carefree, at the zoo, at the park. They served as more than simply pictures. They served as a reminder of our fortitude and capacity for happiness in the face of hardship. With her hair in a disheveled jumble and her eyes gleaming with anticipation, Sophie raced into the room. "Are we going to the park today, Mommy?" I grinned as love grew in my heart. "Yes, my love, today is going to be fantastic." Her laughter reverberated across the room as she clapped her hands. Hooray! I adore the park. I realized that this was the most important thing as I watched her perform. We had moved past the hardships, the hurt, and the treachery. A road of recovery and fresh experiences awaited. I'm Polly, and I'd like to share with you how my world was before things went awry. We lived in a large old house with more rooms than I'd bothered to count when it was just Dad, Mom, and me. It was quiet, you know. It was the type of house where the hallways were full with laughter, and the kitchen was always filled with a delightful aroma. The center of our household was Mom. Polly, rise and shine, sweetheart. She would sing as she woke up, her voice drifting up the stairs. Like any adolescent, I moaned as I dragged myself out of bed, but her cherry pancake smile made it worthwhile. Dad was the cool one. He always had a tale about his childhood or a joke ready to lighten the atmosphere. We would giggle when he said, "When I was your age, I thought I could conquer the world with just a guitar and a bad haircut," knowing that a business suit and a level mind had sufficed for him. It was a nice life, more than excellent. It was flawless. However, everything nice has a tendency of ending too soon, as they say. It seemed as though our small utopia began to fall apart when Mom became ill. I recall the day she informed us. The TV was on in the living room where we were seated, but nobody was looking. "I have some tough news," she began, her eyes showing dread, but her voice firm. The word cancer struck me like a ton of bricks. They exchanged a glance as Dad grabbed for her hand, a wordless pledge to battle it together. Hospitals, therapies, and Mom losing her hair, but not her spirit, were all part of the difficult months that followed. In an attempt to make things easier for us, Mother made a joke about saving money on shampoo, but I could see the tears she believed she was hiding and hear the anxiety in Dad's murmurs when he assumed I was asleep. Everything was different the day we lost her. In an attempt to keep the parts of our broken family together, Dad and I attempted to cling to one another. Dad would reply in a harsh voice, "We'll get through this, Polly, we have to," with the bags under his eyes becoming darker every day. After a year, Dad introduced Victoria to our family. She swept in like a tornado, taking up everything Mom had left behind with her impeccable hair and stylish attire. She gave me a thorough examination when we first met, a grin on her lips suggesting that she had already figured me out. She moved the furniture around and touched Mom's belongings. "George informs me that you are an excellent student. Now that I'm taking care of things, I'm sure you won't mind lending a hand more around here." I recall clenching my fists at my sides. "Can you help?" This was not a boot camp she could manage. This was my home. But I held my tongue for Dad's sake. "Sure, I can do more." Dad seemed to get smaller every day, telling stories less often and laughing less loudly. But he was making an effort for what he referred to as progress. I was not so sure. Our new home required twice as much work because it was twice as big as our previous one. Victoria was already giving orders the day we moved in, her high heels clicking menacingly on the marble floor as she gave the movers instructions. She looked at me after the movers had gone. "I expect you to maintain your personal space, Polly. I'll be too busy cleaning up after you." I watched her, resting against the doorframe. I murmured, "Got it," already dreading the lengthy list of tasks I knew she would assign me. Additionally, supper must be prepared by 6 o'clock every night. You must be able to manage that. Her voice seemed challenging, as if she didn't think I could boil water without it burning. The mansion began to seem more like an upscale jail as the days stretched into weeks. I was left alone with Victoria and her never-ending demands since Dad was away a lot trying to keep his business solvent. "The living room is dusty, Polly. The silver isn't polished, Polly. Did you overlook the dry cleaning, Polly?" It was unrelenting. Dad eventually realized how tense things had gotten one day. He discovered me in the garden, using excessive force to pluck weeds. "You've been silent recently, Polly. Is everything all right?" I wiped the perspiration from my brow and tossed a bunch of weeds into the trash can. "Okay," I said. "I'm just exhausted, Dad. There's a lot to keep up with here." His face grew contemplative as he glanced about. "It's a lot for anyone, indeed. I might speak with Victoria to see if we can get some assistance." It nearly made me chuckle. "I wish you luck in your endeavor. She considers me to be her personal maid." I hadn't seen Dad's face stiffen like that in a long time. "When we came here, I didn't mean that. Polly, I'll take care of it. You shouldn't be burdened with this much." Conversations with Victoria, however, appeared to go in one ear and out the other, despite his best efforts. It was back to business as usual when she nodded and flashed her tight-lipped smile. "The hedges are overgrown, Polly. The guest rooms require new bedding, Polly." Trying to live up to her expectations was difficult, but it also made me obstinate. I refused to allow her to shatter me. I kept my head down, completed the job, and tallied the days until I could head off to college. What kept me going was the idea of leaving, of having my own place where no one could tell me when to put supper on the table or how to sweep the floor. Finally, the day came. I was off to a place where my stepmother's voice couldn't reach me, a city miles away where I could start fresh. I packed up early that morning, each suitcase feeling like a brick in the new foundation I was laying for myself. Dad came out to see me off, his face trying to smile, but I could tell he was torn up about it. "Polly, are you sure you've got everything you need?" Dad asked, looking over the pile of bags and boxes. "And you'll call if you need anything, remember. The money for your rent and books. It'll be in your account. Check it when you get there." "Dad, relax. I'll be fine. I'm just going to college, not Mars." I was trying to keep it light, to make this easier for him, but my own heart was hammering in my chest. The freedom of living alone was everything I thought it would be and more. My apartment was small, but it was mine. No one to tell me to clean up, no one to report to, just my own space. My classes were tough, but I was tougher. I was determined to make the most out of this opportunity, studying hard and keeping my grades up. It wasn't long before I realized that living on a tight budget wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. Money was always on my mind. I didn't go out much. I didn't see the point in blowing cash on parties when I had a goal in mind. Instead, I picked up a part-time job at a local cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it was income, and every little bit helped. One evening, my coworker Mike caught me counting my tips for the third time. He leaned against the counter, a smirk on his face. "What, you trying to make those bills multiplied by staring at them?" I rolled my eyes, shoving the cash into my wallet, just making sure I got everything. Budgeting isn't exactly a thrill. Mike laughed, pulling off his apron as he prepared to close up. "You know you could ease up a bit. Come out with us tonight. We're just grabbing a drink to unwind." I hesitated. It was tempting, but sorry I can't. Need to save every penny I earn. Maybe next time. I was here to build a future, one where I'd be financially stable enough to never have to rely on anyone, Victoria or otherwise. I wanted to save enough to buy Dad something nice, something to show him how much I appreciated everything he'd done for me. Just when I thought I had my life at college figured out, everything started to unravel. It began with a call that I never saw coming. Victoria was on the other line, her voice cool and detached as she delivered the news that would turn my world upside down. "Polly, your father's hit a rough patch financially," she said without a hint of sympathy. "We're tightening belts around here, and unfortunately, this means we can't send you money for your rent anymore." The line went dead before I could protest further. I was stunned, the reality of my situation slowly setting in. No more money meant no more apartment on my own, no more safety net. I had to act fast. I explained my situation to Jenny, my college friend and classmate. She was as kind-hearted as they come, always ready to lend a hand or an ear, whichever you needed more. "Polly, that's awful. Look, why don't you move in with me? We could split the rent, and it'll be cheaper for both of us," she offered while we were studying in the library. Moving in with Jenny was a breath of fresh air during a suffocating time. We shared costs, which made life somewhat more manageable. But just as I was adjusting to this new normal, another blow came. 6 months later, Victoria messaged me on a social network. This time, no more money for tuition either. "Your father's situation hasn't improved. You need to stand on your own now." Reading those words, I felt a mix of anger and despair. My savings were meager at best, eaten away by bills and necessities. I tightened my budget even further, cutting down on everything non-essential, especially food. Meals became smaller, more about sustenance than enjoyment, and my clothes started hanging looser on my frame. One evening, Jenny knocked on my door, her arms laden with grocery bags. She must have noticed my weight loss. "Hey, I picked up some extra stuff. Made too much dinner too. You should come eat with us." I peeked out, seeing the warm light and smelling the food from the kitchen. My stomach growled, but I shook my head. "Thanks, Jen, but I can't. I need to save every penny. I've got to pay for tuition somehow." Jenny frowned, setting her jaw stubbornly. "Polly, you need to eat, and you're not paying for this. Okay, it's just leftovers." I wanted to argue, to maintain that thread of independence I was clinging to, but another growl from my stomach betrayed me. "Okay, maybe just a little. Thanks, Jen." As the semester wore on, I threw myself into my studies with even more fervor, if that was possible. The only way out of this financial mess was through scholarships, and I wasn't about to let anything jeopardize that. Jenny often tried to coax me into taking breaks, coming to parties, or just hanging out with friends. "Polly, come on, you can't study all the time. Come out with us tonight. It'll be fun, and you need a break." I always had the same answer. "I can't, Jen. I really need to ace these exams." "But you're always working or studying. When do you ever relax?" Jenny protested, her concern evident. "Relaxing doesn't pay the bills," I replied curtly, my eyes never leaving my books. As the pressure mounted, my body began to feel the strain. Long hours at my job, followed by longer nights of studying, left me exhausted, running on fumes. But I couldn't stop, not when I was so close to earning that scholarship, not when my entire future was on the line. The shift at the diner had dragged on forever, and by the time I clocked out, the sun was already painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. Exhausted didn't even begin to cover how I felt, but classes waited for no one, and I had a midterm to prepare for. Dragging my feet to my apartment, I planned to grab a quick shower and head straight to campus. However, as I reached for my keys, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The world spun wildly, and the ground seemed to rush up to meet me. The last thing I remembered was the cold pavement against my cheek, then darkness. I woke up with a start, the sterile smell of antiseptic flooding my senses. Blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights, I found myself in a hospital bed, an IV drip attached to my arm and Jenny sitting by my side, her expression a mix of relief and worry. "Polly, you're awake. God, you scared me." "I found you passed out outside your apartment," Jenny said, her voice shaky. "You collapsed. Polly, the doctor said you're severely malnourished and dehydrated. You've been pushing yourself too hard. You need to rest." Rest was a luxury I couldn't afford, not now, not with everything hanging by a thread. But arguing felt like running a marathon, and I didn't have the energy. After a couple of days under observation, I was discharged with strict instructions to take it easy. Instructions that might as well have been written in sand for all the good they did. I headed straight home, my body weak but my mind racing with all the things I needed to catch up on. Once home, I tried calling Dad. I needed to hear his voice, to tell him what happened. Maybe, just maybe, he could help. But the calls went straight to voicemail. Frustrated and feeling more alone than ever, I dialed Victoria's number next. She picked up on the third ring. "Yes, it's Polly," I started, but the words tangled up, thick with emotions. I couldn't control. "Your father is out of the country on business," she interrupted sharply. "And before you ask, no, we can't help. You're on your own." Her words hit like a slap. "But there's nothing more to discuss. Polly, you're an adult. Handle it." The line went dead, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. I sat there, phone in hand, the weight of her dismissal crushing. It was then, in that quiet apartment, that the reality of my situation truly sank in. I was alone, utterly and completely. Exams were creeping up, looming over me like dark clouds ready to burst. The stress was a tangible thing, wrapping its fingers around my throat, making it hard to breathe. To keep up with my studies, I had no choice but to let go of one of my jobs. Money, already a trickle, now felt like it had dried up to a few last drops. Sitting across from Jenny in the little diner we frequented, I fiddled with the edge of the menu, my stomach growling but my wallet painfully thin. "Stop looking at the prices, Polly." "I've got this, okay," Jenny said, her voice firm but gentle. She was trying to be supportive, but accepting help never got easier. "I'll pay you back every cent," I muttered, feeling the weight of each word. Jenny rolled her eyes, a smile tugging at her lips. Yeah, I know. Just order something hearty, all right. You look like you could use it." Reluctantly, I ordered the cheapest meal, my pride aching with every word. But Jenny was right. I needed the energy, especially now as the exams rolled in one after the other. I poured everything I had into them. Nights blurred into days, textbooks and notes scattered around me like a fortress. When the results came in, I couldn't believe my eyes. Straight A's. A 2,000 tuition bonus followed, a small but significant light at the end of a very dark tunnel. I should have been over the moon, but all I could do was collapse into bed, my body and mind shutting down from sheer exhaustion. I slept for days, missing calls and messages, the world moving on without me. One night, wrapped in the solitude of my small apartment, I dreamed of Mom. She was in our old kitchen, humming a tune, her smile warm and inviting. "Polly, come here, sweetheart," she called, her voice a soft echo of better days. In my dream, I went to her, basking in the feeling of being home, being safe. But as dreams do, it ended, and I woke up in tears, the ache in my chest raw and fierce. The emptiness of the apartment was suffocating, and a desperate need to connect with her overwhelmed me. I made a decision then, one that felt like grasping at straws but necessary. I would go back to my hometown, visit her grave, and maybe, just maybe, find some of that peace I saw in my dream. Checking my bank account, I calculated what I could afford. A cheap bus ticket, the cheapest I could find. Work could do without me for a couple of days. I wasn't much use to them or anyone else in my current state anyway. "Jen, I'm going home for a couple of days," I told her over the phone, my voice more steady than I felt. "Home." There was a pause, and I could picture her brow furrowing in concern. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "Okay, but call me, all right? Anytime, day or night." "Promise," I said, feeling a thread of warmth at her concern. The journey back was a blur, my thoughts a tangled mess of memories and what-ifs. As the bus rolled into the familiar streets of my hometown, a mixture of dread and longing settled in my stomach. It was supposed to be a simple visit, a moment to feel close to Mom again. But as I walked among the graves, a figure in the distance caught my eye. My heart skipped at the familiar stoop of the shoulders kneeling by a grave. "Dad." My voice was tentative, almost afraid to shatter the fragile moment. The figure turned, and our eyes met. There was a flicker of confusion, then recognition, and something that looked a lot like sorrow. "Polly," his voice broke, raw with emotion. It had been so long. I ran to him, no longer caring about the cold or the tears that had started to spill over. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He rose quickly, nearly stumbling in his haste, and enveloped me in his arms. I was suddenly 5 years old again, safe and cherished. I had a dream about your mother, he confessed, pulling back just enough to see my face. She told me to come here today. I gasped, the parallel too stark to ignore. I had a dream about her too. That's why I'm here. Dad wiped away my tears with an old handkerchief, rough and a bit frayed. Seems like she's still looking out for us, huh? Yeah, seems like it, I agreed, laughter mingling with my tears. We should talk, Polly. Come back to the house with me, Dad suggested, his tone hopeful yet cautious. I hesitated, images of Victoria's cold stare flashing through my mind. Are you sure? What about Victoria? She'll manage. You're my daughter, and we have a lot to catch up on. His voice held a firmness I hadn't heard in a long time. The ride to the house was filled with an awkward yet comforting silence. When we arrived, Victoria was in the front yard, pruning roses with sharp snips that seemed to echo her mood. Polly, what are you doing here? She stood up straight, her eyes narrowing as she took in my presence. I stepped forward, bolstered by Dad's presence. I came to see Dad. We have some things to talk about. Dad nodded at Victoria. Why don't you make us some dinner? We'll be inside. Her mouth tightened, but she nodded stiffly and headed inside. Dad led me into the living room, a space that once felt warm but now seemed curated for appearance rather than comfort. The tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Victoria, looking paler than usual, was fussing about, leaving the house on some urgent errand. But Dad's voice stopped her cold. Sit down, we're not done here. Reluctantly, Victoria sat, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Dad turned his attention to me, his brow furrowed in concern. Polly, you've lost so much weight. Are you on some sort of diet? I spat out a sour laugh and shook my head. Diet? Not very likely. Dad, it's a need, not a choice. Since I've been covering all of my living expenses and tuition on my own, I've been having financial difficulties. He was clearly confused. What are you discussing? I've been paying your bills with $3,000 each month. It has consistently been deposited into your account on the 15th of each month. Stunned, I gazed at him. What? For the past 2 years, Dad, I haven't seen a single penny of that money. I've been working 2 jobs to cover my tuition and expenses. As he turned to face Victoria, Dad's face lost color. Is this accurate? Where is the money? Victoria's chair scraped noisily across the floor as she jerked to her feet. I required it. It wasn't intended to last forever. There was a faint snarl in Dad's voice. Now tell me everything. After hesitating, she revealed the information. A money pyramid scam entangled me. I ended up in debt even though I believed I could turn our financial troubles around and make a quick cash. You can't say no to the folks I interacted with. I paid them back using Polly's money. I believed I could swap it out before anyone saw. Dad's hands trembled. You put my daughter's health and education in jeopardy over a quick money scam, and you kept this from me. I was unsure of what to do. Victoria let out a cry, her normally composed demeanor broken. Dad firmly responded, You're going to leave tonight, and got to his feet. And we've left this place. I'd like a divorce. Following Victoria's careless packing and departure, Dad turned to face me with sad eyes. I'm really sorry, Polly. I didn't know. I'll take care of your money personally from now on. No more intermediaries. I forced a little grin. In fact, Dad, I recently received a scholarship. Covered tuition anger gave way to pride as his eyes brightened. That's my girl. She never fails to make me proud. However, you merit a respite. What about taking a trip? An actual seaside one? You deserve it. Blue skies, beautiful beaches, and the calming sound of the waves made the holiday seem like a dream. It was an opportunity for me to refuel and move past the hardships and suffering. I came back with more energy and was eager to start studying again. I continued to work part-time when I was back in school, not out of need, but rather to save money for a special present for Dad as a token of appreciation for everything. I was able to enjoy life rather than merely survive it by going to the occasional party with friends in spite of the difficulties and obstacles. One evening, as I was getting ready, Jenny said, "I see you're going out more." Trying to strike a balance, I suppose. With my earrings adjusted, I answered, "I'm learning it's okay to have a little fun." She threw a pillow at me and quipped, "Just remember us when you're famous." "I won't." I chuckled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Could never. I saw a reflection of someone who had weathered a storm and come out stronger as I glanced in the mirror. Some habits are difficult to break, therefore I continued to be cautious with my money. Now, though, it was motivated by a desire to create a future rather than despair. I decided on a future that at last appeared promising.